For 3 days, Sarah lived in a parallel universe where she smiled at the right moments, kissed Mark goodbye in the mornings, and pretended she hadn't seen her world shatter into a million pieces. Each "I love you" from him felt like swallowing broken glass. Each time he checked his phone, she noticed how he angled it away from her, a habit she'd previously dismissed, but now understood with crushing clarity. During family dinner at his parents' house, Sarah watched with a detached fascination as Mark expertly played the role of devoted fiancé. He kept his hand on her lower back, shared loving glances, and enthusiastically discussed their wedding plans. His mother gushed about the table settings Sarah had chosen, while his father raised a toast to the perfect couple. Sarah smiled and nodded, all while documenting everything on her phone, recording conversations that proved the timeline of his deception. The breaking point came when Mark announced he'd planned a surprise romantic dinner for them. Sarah overheard him on the phone in their bedroom, speaking in hushed tones. Yes, it's all set. Sarah won't suspect anything about next week's trip. I'll tell her tonight it's a last-minute conference. That evening, Sarah dressed carefully in the red silk dress Mark had always loved. She styled her hair, applied her makeup, and slipped the folder of evidence into her clutch. When Mark picked her up, he'd made reservations at Le Petit Jardin, their special occasion restaurant, where they'd celebrated their engagement just 6 months ago. The maître led them to a secluded corner table, surrounded by flickering candles. Mark ordered their favorite champagne, his hands steady as he poured it into crystal flutes. He looked so confident, so sure of his ability to maintain his double life. "You've outdone yourself," Sarah said softly, reaching for her clutch. "The restaurant, the champagne. It's perfect for what I had in mind." Mark's smile widened. "Anything for you, babe." Sarah placed the folder on the table between them, next to the champagne bucket. "I thought we could look through some photos together." Her voice remained calm, even as her heart thundered in her chest. "Maybe start with your Miami conference." The color drained from Mark's face as she slowly opened the folder. Out spilled the screenshots, the photos, the credit card statements showing matching jewelry purchases, a devastating trail of evidence that stripped away his carefully constructed lies. "I can explain," he started, reaching for her hand. Sarah pulled back. "Actually, you can't. But Jessica might want to explain why she's been wearing the bracelet you bought her with our joint account. The one you told me was for your sister." She took a deliberate sip of champagne. "By the way, I already called the wedding planner this morning. Don't worry about the deposits. I paid for most of them anyway." Life had a funny way of coming full circle. 1 year after discovering those damning photos on Mark's laptop, Sarah found herself presenting a rebranding proposal to none other than the Hamilton Foundation, the very charity where Mark and Jessica's affair had begun. The irony wasn't lost on her as she stood in the boardroom, commanding attention in her emerald silk blazer. "The current brand lacks authenticity," Sarah explained, her voice steady as she clicked through her presentation. "We need to tell the real story." From the corner of her eye, she caught Jessica shifting uncomfortably in her seat. As the foundation's events coordinator, Jessica had no choice but to be there. Sarah continued, professional to her core. "Your donors want transparency. They want truth." The words carried a weight that made Jessica study her coffee cup intently. "I propose a complete digital overhaul, starting with an innovative social media campaign focused on genuine human connections." The board members leaned forward, captivated. Sarah's reputation had grown significantly over the past year. Klein and Morrison's digital division had flourished under her leadership, and her personal design blog had gained a substantial following. Success, she'd discovered, was the sweetest revenge. "Impressive work, Ms. Chen," the board chairman announced after her presentation. "We'd be honored to have you lead this rebranding effort." As the room erupted in applause, Sarah caught Jessica's panicked glance at her phone, no doubt texting Mark about this unexpected development. That evening, Sarah's photo shoot for Business Insider's 30 Under 30 feature captured her in her element, surrounded by design mock-ups in her sun-filled office, a subtle smile playing on her lips. The photographer praised her natural confidence, unaware that just a year ago, She'd been planning table settings instead of marketing strategies. The article went viral in their social circle within hours of publication. Rising star in digital design: how Sarah Chen is reshaping the industry, became the talk of LinkedIn. Former skeptics who'd questioned her decision to leave Mark now shared the article with passionate endorsements. Even Mark's sister, Emma, liked the post, a small act of rebellion against family loyalty. But the real transformation wasn't in the professional accolades or the doubled salary or even the corner office with a view of the city. It was in the quiet moments, declining a dinner invitation because it conflicted with her art class, speaking up in meetings without second-guessing herself, buying a condo in her favorite neighborhood without wondering if someone else would like it. That night, as Sarah watered the small forest of plants thriving in her new home office, her phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. "Board loved your Hamilton Foundation pitch. But more importantly, have you seen the comments on your feature? You're trending, girl." Sarah smiled, reaching for her tablet to check the article. The first comment caught her eye, from someone who knew her before. "This isn't just a transformation, it's a revelation of who she always was." It was signed E. Williams, Mark's sister. The email arrived at 3 a.m., just as Sarah finished packing the last of her belongings into cardboard boxes. Subject line: "About us? Please read." Mark's desperate attempt at damage control had been sent to their entire social circle. "Sarah and I have mutually decided to end our engagement. We ask for privacy during this difficult time for both of us." Sarah's phone immediately lit up with messages. Some expressed shock, others offered support, but most asked that dreaded question: what happened? The carefully crafted narrative in Mark's email painted a picture of mature adults making a conscious choice to part ways. No mention of the other woman, no mention of the lies, no mention of how he'd been living a double life for months. She left her response simple: an Instagram post of her packing boxes, captioned, "Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away. Let them wonder, let them talk." She had bigger things to focus on. The following week proved more challenging than she'd anticipated. Their shared favorite coffee shop, where she planned to work on freelance projects, became enemy territory when she walked in to find Mark and Jessica huddled at their usual corner table. They wore matching expressions of guilt and defiance, as if their presence there was somehow justified. Sarah ordered her lavender latte to go, her hand steady as she handed over her card, deliberately avoiding their corner of performative whispers and concerned glances. That night, fueled by a mixture of anger and inspiration, Sarah opened her laptop. The wedding website she'd been designing, the very project that had led to her discovery, stared back at her. Hours of work, carefully chosen fonts, and a precise color scheme that had been meant to celebrate their love. Her cursor hovered over the delete button. Then it hit her. Instead of erasing her work, she began to transform it. The romantic script became bold, modern typography. The soft, dreamy color palette shifted to powerful, confident tones. Their engagement photos disappeared, replaced by her best design projects. By sunrise, their wedding website had become her professional portfolio, showcasing her skills in turning something broken into something beautiful. The final touch: a new header that read, "Sarah Chen Design Studio, transforming visions into reality." When her phone buzzed again, it wasn't another sympathetic message. It was a notification that Mark's mother was still trying to access the wedding website's planning section. Sarah smiled, imagining her former future mother-in-law's surprise at finding a thriving business website instead of wedding details. She copied the URL and pasted it into a new email. "Dear Elizabeth, the wedding's off, but my career's just beginning. Feel free to share the new website with anyone who asks what happened. Best regards, Sarah Chen, founder and creative director." The New York Digital Innovation Awards ceremony buzzed with energy as Sarah adjusted her acceptance speech cards backstage. Rising star in digital marketing wasn't just a trophy. It was validation of every late night, every risk, and every time she'd chosen herself over comfortable compromise. She didn't notice him until after her speech. As she walked to her car, heels clicking against the parking garage concrete, a familiar figure emerged from behind a pillar. Mark stood there, looking simultaneously expensive and exhausted in his tailored suit, clutching a manila envelope like a lifeline. "Your speech was amazing," he said, his voice carrying that same gentle persuasion she once mistook for love. "I watched from the back. You're incredible, Sarah." Sarah's grip tightened on her award. "The garage is for guests and honorees only, Mark. How did you get in?" He pulled out a crumpled ceremony ticket. "I bought it months ago. Been following your success. That Hamilton Foundation rebrand? Genius." He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous tick she remembered well. "Jessica left. With Richard, our boss. Karma, right?" The irony might have been satisfying a year ago. Now it just felt hollow. Sarah checked her watch. She had a breakfast meeting with potential investors in 7 hours. "I've been thinking about us," Mark continued, opening the envelope. Out spilled their old photos. Holidays, birthdays, that trip to wine country. "Remember how good we were before I messed everything up? You're even more amazing now. And I—" "Stop." Sarah's voice was firm but not unkind. "Look at these photos, Mark. Really look at them. See how I'm always slightly behind you. How I'm always looking at you while you're looking at the camera. That wasn't love. That was me making myself smaller to fit your narrative. I was scared," he admitted, stepping closer. "Scared you'd outgrow me. And now you have, but I've changed. I'm in therapy. I'm ready to support your success, to be the man you deserve." Sarah thought about the morning's headline. Chen Digital Studios secures major investment. About the small team of designers who looked up to her. About the art class students she mentored on weekends. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, cream-colored cardstock with raised gold lettering. "My rates for personal branding start at 5 figures, she said, holding it out. "If you're serious about changing your narrative, my team does excellent work. But this," she gestured between them, "this story ended a long time ago. Sarah, please." "Goodbye, Mark." She walked to her car, the click of her heels echoing with finality. In her rearview mirror, she watched him standing there, clutching old photographs of a woman who no longer existed. Her phone buzzed. A text from her investment team about tomorrow's meeting. The future was calling. And this time, she wasn't looking back. 2 years to the day after discovering those photos on Mark's laptop, Sarah stood in the gleaming lobby of her newly expanded office space. Chen Digital Studios now occupied the entire 32nd floor, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city she'd nearly left behind for a life that wasn't meant to be hers. "Ms. Chen." Her assistant appeared at her elbow. "The Folds photographer is here for the Women in Tech feature." Sarah smoothed her blazer, electric blue, a color she'd never have worn in her previous life, and walked into the conference room. The wall behind her desk displayed her most prized possession, a framed collection featuring her unused wedding invitation, transformed into her company's first logo, alongside the evolution of their brand, through 5 successful iterations. Each version marked a milestone in her journey from heartbroken fiancé to industry leader. The photo shoot was interrupted by an urgent text from Emma. "Heads up, Mark and Jessica are both at the Digital Marketing Summit. They're working under Richard again. Thought you should know before your keynote." Sarah smiled, pocketing her phone. 2 years ago, this news would have sent her into an emotional tailspin. Now, it was merely a footnote in her day. Later, as she took the summit stage, she spotted them in the middle row. Jessica, whose affair with their boss had eventually imploded, sat rigid beside Mark. They looked trapped in the same patterns, the same dynamics that had once threatened to define Sarah's life. Mark had gained weight, his once confident posture now slumped. They were living proof that karma needed no assistance from her. "Innovation isn't just about technology," Sarah began, her voice carrying across the packed auditorium. "It's about having the courage to rewrite your own story." Behind her, slides showcased Chen Digital's latest triumph, a revolutionary app helping women rebuild their lives after personal setbacks. During the standing ovation, Sarah caught a glimpse of Mark trying to make his way toward the stage, but she was already moving to her next appointment. a mentoring session with young designers, many of whom had found her through her viral blog post. That evening, in her home office, Sarah finished reviewing applications for her foundation's first round of grants. The initiative would fund women-led startups, turning other people's moments of crisis into catalysts for change. Her phone buzzed with a reminder: dinner with David, the kind and brilliant architect she'd been dating for 6 months. A relationship built on mutual growth rather than dependency. As she gathered her things, Sarah's eyes fell on a small frame on her desk. Inside was a fortune cookie message from that first terrible dinner alone after the breakup. Rock bottom will teach you lessons mountaintops never will. She'd once thought losing Mark meant losing herself. Instead, it had meant finding herself and helping countless others do the same. Running her fingers over her company's latest award, Sarah smiled. Sometimes, the most beautiful gardens grew from scorched earth, and hers was just beginning to bloom. Spring cleaning came early that year. While sorting through old emails for client contacts, Sarah discovered a folder she'd labeled Career Opportunities, Discuss with Mark. Opening it felt like unearthing a time capsule of buried dreams. There, gathering digital dust, sat the email from Klein and Morrison Design Group, the prestigious firm that had headhunted her 2 years ago. "I just don't think it's the right time," Mark had said then, his voice gentle but firm. The commute would be brutal, and with the wedding coming up, he'd painted a picture of stress and strain on their relationship, of sacrificing their future family plans for corporate ambition. She'd declined the offer the next day. Now, with clear eyes, Sarah saw the subtle pattern. How Mark had questioned her decision to take on freelance clients. How he'd suggested she focus on their wedding planning instead of building her portfolio. How he'd framed every career leap as a potential threat to their relationship. Her hands trembling with anger, Sarah clicked on Klein and Morrison's website. Their office photos showed open spaces flooded with natural light, walls adorned with award-winning campaigns. On their team page, she recognized Lisa Thompson, the creative director who'd interviewed her. Before she could talk herself out of it, Sarah drafted an email. "Dear Lisa, you once saw potential in my work. I've grown significantly since then, both professionally and personally. I'd love to show you how." The response came within hours. "Sarah, I remember you well. Your portfolio caught my eye again recently. Coffee tomorrow?" The universe had a sense of humor. The money she'd been saving for her wedding dress now bought her a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. The hours she planned to spend on seating arrangements went into polishing her portfolio. Even her engagement ring, returned to Mark via certified mail, helped fund her new professional website. During the interview, Lisa studied Sarah's work with keen interest. "Your recent designs show an edge we didn't see before. There's confidence here, authenticity." She paused at the wedding website turned portfolio. "Sometimes our best work comes from transforming pain into purpose." Sarah found herself sharing the story, not of victimhood, but of awakening, of recognizing how she dimmed her own light to make someone else comfortable. Lisa nodded, understanding written across her face. "We're expanding our digital division," Lisa said, sliding across a folder. "The role comes with double your current salary and creative freedom. The commute is exactly what your ex warned about." She smiled. "Think you can handle it?" Sarah opened the folder, her future laid out in clean, crisp typography, the same font she'd almost used for her wedding invitations. She thought about Mark's warnings, his subtle manipulations, his fear of her success. "When can I start?" The daily ritual began 3 weeks after the awards ceremony. Every morning, a different coffee shop's cup appeared on Sarah's desk. Caramel macchiato from Sterling Coffee, vanilla latte from Bluebird Cafe, hazelnut cappuccino from the Daily Grind. Each cup carried the same message scrawled in familiar handwriting. "Just 5 minutes?" Mark's campaign for reconciliation had evolved from desperate to methodical. He'd somehow convinced her favorite florist to deliver weekly arrangements to her office. Her assistant fielded calls from his mother, who claimed she just wanted to heal the family rift. Even her doorman reported turning away multiple deliveries of her once-favorite macarons from that little French bakery in Greenwich Village. The final straw came during her mother's birthday dinner. Mark's mother called. Her mom said carefully, studying Sarah's reaction. She thinks if we all had dinner together. Sarah set down her fork, a sudden clarity washing over her. That night, she opened her laptop and began typing. The Art of Rebuilding. A Guide to Rising from Relationship Ashes. The words flowed effortlessly, fueled by months of therapy insights and years of hard-won wisdom. She wrote about the subtle signs of emotional manipulation, the way ambition could be slowly smothered by someone else's insecurities, and the powerful renaissance that could follow devastation. She didn't name names, but she painted pictures so vivid that anyone who'd lived through similar experiences would recognize their own story. The blog post went live at midnight. By morning, it had been shared thousands of times. Comments flooded in. "This is exactly what I needed to read today. You put into words what I couldn't explain to my family. Thank you for showing me there's life after betrayal." A week later, Sarah stood on stage at the Women's Leadership Summit, facing an audience of 500. In the third row, she spotted Mark's sister Emma, notepad in hand, eyes bright with unshed tears. "Transformation," Sarah began, her voice steady, "isn't about erasing your past. It's about understanding how each crack in your foundation can become a channel for new growth." The presentation screen behind her showed the evolution of her company's logo, from the repurposed wedding website to the powerhouse brand it had become. That evening, Emma waited for her by the stage. "I needed to apologize," she said, twisting her hands together, "for how our family treated you, for not seeing what was happening." She paused. "Mark's still trying to fix things with grand gestures, isn't he?" Sarah smiled softly. "Tell him he can stop with the coffee deliveries. I've turned his persistence into purpose. Every cup reminds me to pour that energy into helping others rebuild." Later, alone in her office, Sarah drafted one final email to Mark. "The greatest gift you unknowingly gave me was the opportunity to discover my own strength. I've forgiven you, not for your sake, but for mine. Please respect that my story is no longer intertwined with yours. Your next chapter belongs to you alone." She clicked send, then turned to review the speaker requests that had flooded in since her summit presentation. Her story, it seemed, was just beginning. Sarah Chen sat cross-legged on her gray velvet couch, surrounded by wedding magazines and color swatches. Her laptop balanced precariously on a stack of venue brochures. The autumn sun streamed through their high-rise apartment windows, casting a warm glow on the organized chaos of wedding planning. She smiled, taking a sip of her chamomile tea as she logged into Mark's laptop, something she'd done countless times before to access their shared photos for their wedding website. The familiar desktop background of their engagement photo in Central Park greeted her, Mark kissing her cheek while golden leaves swirled around them. It was the perfect shot, one that had gained hundreds of likes on Instagram and prompted their friends to joke about them being couple goals. Sarah navigated to their shared photo folder, humming their first dance song under her breath. That's when she noticed it. A new folder tucked away in a subfolder of Mark's work documents, simply labeled JM Project. As a graphic designer herself, Sarah was familiar with client project folders, but something about this one felt off. It hadn't been there last week when she'd borrowed his laptop to show her mother the honeymoon destination photos. Her cursor hovered over the folder. A small voice in her head whispered that she should respect Mark's privacy. That trust was the foundation of their 5-year relationship. But another voice, one that had been growing increasingly insistent over the past few months, reminded her of the late-night texts, the sudden business trips, and the way Mark had been password protecting his phone, something he'd never done before. With slightly trembling fingers, Sarah clicked the folder. Her breath caught in her throat. Instead of work documents, she found herself staring at dozens of photos, intimate snapshots from what appeared to be a recent beach vacation. Mark's smiling face looked back at her, his arms wrapped around a woman Sarah recognized all too well, Jessica Martinez, his new project manager. The photos were dated 2 weeks ago, when Mark had told her he was at a conference in Miami. There they were, sharing sunset cocktails, walking on the beach, and Sarah's stomach lurched, kissing in front of their hotel room. The same hotel they had talked about booking for their own honeymoon. As if the universe wanted to twist the knife further, a notification popped up in the corner of the screen. A new email from Jessica to Mark. Last night was amazing. Can't wait until she's out of town again next week. Sarah's teacup slipped from her suddenly numb fingers, spilling across the wedding magazines. She barely noticed. Her eyes were fixed on another detail in the photos. Jessica was wearing a delicate silver bracelet, one that Sarah herself had helped Mark pick out last month for his sister's birthday. The same bracelet Sarah had complimented Jessica on just 3 days ago, during their meeting about the charity gala she was helping coordinate. Jessica had smiled, touching it fondly, and said, "It was a gift from someone special."